your process and like switching over from shooting film to digital and how that changed over time? Because right now I'm only shooting film and hoping to get into digital eventually.
Yeah, again, I think because I embrace the idea that I'm interested in content and not so much interested in the technical side of photography. You know, when digital came along, I mean, I didn't jump into it like that, but I just said, you know, it was too obvious that this is what was going to be. And I just didn't want to waste time not getting started, you know, and I just got started with it, you know. And do I mourn the loss of my Mamiya camera, the 647? I do. I mean, it was wonderful. I had a great lens on it. I had the 140. It was beautiful. I took Polaroids. You know, I loved it, but it was time to move on. I remember, I tell this story a lot, but in the 70s, you know, they stopped producing Kodachrome. Mm-hmm. And I know photographers ran to the stores, bought boxes of Kodachrome, stuck them in their freezers, hoping to keep it. And I just thought it was time to move on and try to figure out how to use digital as best I could and be secure or just remind myself that it was about what was inside the image, you know, and you'll get there. I do feel like my experience of learning in the darkroom, learning black and white, film in the camera, it had a kind of limitation to it that helped teach you. I think being limited is powerful to begin with. To have less choice of what can happen is a good learning tool. If you do this for a long time, everything changes, and you know, I'm not embracing it, but I'm learning about it like everyone else is learning about it. You know, I'm like this surprise that it's not really sharp, you know, and it kind of has this pretend sharp. The thing that bugs me the most is when I go take a picture, and I bring the work back to my studio to basically render it, or I can't get what I saw when I shot it, you know, on the back of the camera. You know, it's just like irritating. And what's worse is it looks incredible on the screen and I can't get the output. And then what you shoot when you're out there may not necessarily be what you want when you get back to the computer to render it. You may want it flatter. You may want to shoot it flatter. You may want to open up, you know, have more latitude so when you go back, you can actually bring it back down and go dark. You're back in the dark room in front of that computer, for sure.
I was a little bit curious about your distinction between, so you said for a while you considered yourself a journalist, but then you were like, no, that's not really the case. And reading in one of the books that you gave us, you mentioned that you consider yourself now more like a conceptual artist who uses photography.
Right now. Yeah. Now, I feel that way very strongly, yeah.
I would like maybe to know, what do you think that shift is between photographer and conceptual artist? How do you see that switch?
I think the digital, quite honestly. I do think the digital, that there's more play in the photograph itself, you know. I'm not afraid to, I want it to look like it does, it's not played with, but there's definitely work done, you know, to the point where I have to say it's coming to another place.
Right.
It's in another place, and I actually really like it. I like having that ability to sort of maybe change perspective in the background, you know, move someone over to the left. It's a little bizarre. It's definitely a whole new world, yeah.
Is that how you, like I noticed in some pictures that the one that you did of Kanye and Kim, and it's from a mirror, like you can see that the mirror, but you weren't there. Like, did you just Photoshop yourself out?
I did.
Okay. Like, she's just not there.
That's good. But you know what? We are really smart. We know something's been worked on or played with. It's not like we're not pulling wool over anyone's eyes. And that's the thing about the whole digital work now that's coming out is, I mean, I can't stand when it's blatant, you know, but it's like it is a whole other kind of genre coming out with the digital work now that you know, because we it's like people aren't that sharp. I mean, we start to see like, oh my God, you see all the, you know, what was the Gladiator film, the 300 or something? Anyone see it? It was very gory, but it was kind of incredible, you know, graphically, you know, interesting, you know, how sharp and everything weird it was. So things are meant to be sort of turned upside down and figured out. And you know, I do base my work on traditional photography and traditional photographs, but I like taking it somewhere else.
There was an image that you did of Renee Fleming. There appeared to be like a bit of a blur in it, like maybe she was moving.
Oh, no, that's sharp. That's sharp. No, I'm just kidding. It's not.
And I found that to be very encouraging because it's such a beautiful image. So I just think it's interesting to hear that, you know,
Let me
it wasn't
find,
always like, let's
because
keep
I took these
everything
books.
sharp.
It wasn't so much you didn't want it to be sharp. It's just it wasn't sharp. You know, 35 millimeter printed on paper, you know, wasn't sharp. So Julia Margaret Cameron, and I was trying to explain this, she worked with this camera that had the long lens. I wonder if there's a picture of it.
Yeah, I remember.
And a lot of the pictures were soft. She was sort of, anyway, her pictures were sort of soft focus because they were just at f8, and she just had to find that spot, you know, where it was okay. The great story about that is you know, so she died and she left her equipment to her son, who became a photographer, and he became a portrait photographer, and his pictures were really sharp, or sharper and cleaner, and they were boring as hell. They really weren't very good, and he never really made a very good living. But she created these little tableaus that she did with her neighbors. This is very beautiful. This is against the wall in the back area of, you know, very Victorian, actually. I've been looking at these because I've been thinking about how to photograph Alice Waters. Interestingly enough, who's working in digital here? Yeah, are you finding that you have to be so critically sharp? I mean, you have to be right on to print it, because it seems to me it goes out of focus really easy, really fast and easy. It's just like, it's not, you think it's digital, everything is sharp. It's just not. As everything gets soft, like you know, I have an Austrian assistant, and he says, I mean, it's not sharp, it's not sharp, it's not sharp. And like all the way through the shoot, he's telling me it's not sharp, you're out of focus. And finally I just say, don't talk to me anymore, you know, because he's like, everything is not sharp to him. And I just, you know, one thing I do is I go and sit down afterwards, and, you know, they have this sharpening tool, which is, you know, you're not supposed to use that, but I just say, sharpen it up, I don't care, you know. It's harder to have things appear sharper with the digital. Is anyone else finding, like, you have to be so critical with it? And you would think it's not true, right? That it's digital is supposed to be instantly sharp, right?
Yeah, especially when you manually focus using the lens, or otherwise if you auto, like, it's gonna be another thing, I feel like.
I mean, there are so many features on cameras now that are kind of amazing. The autofocus abilities now are amazing, but a lot of those smaller little cameras, those autofocuses, don't really autofocus, you know? They're autofocusing on something you don't particularly want them to autofocus on, and you still haven't gotten the hang of how to move that little throttle swish around or something. But there are pictures that are not, they're either camera movement, not me. I wouldn't, there's no way I would shake when I take a picture. No, I'm just kidding. You know, there's camera movement. This means I move the camera, or the subject is moved. I was in Monument Valley for 3 days, and I went all over it. I rented a helicopter. I made several side swipes by the fingers and took pictures, and of course it couldn't help but be somewhat blurred. it's bigger than just being out of focus. It was really emotional landscape. I come from, shooting 35 millimeter, black and white, small camera, and I really learned black and white, 400 and 800 ASA, and I knew exactly. I can't believe it. I look back at that stuff now, and all of it's out of focus. Like I was at a 15th at f2 wide open, or, what I found out is, if the content is important, you just have to let it go, and some of it is not going to be sharp. I'm a very flat photographer. I like, mostly putting people up against the wall because I'm afraid of depth of field. I don't really know, like, that depth of field thing you have on your camera, and you're supposed to, has it ever worked for you? I've never understood it. Like, you have between this and this. Are you learning that?
Yeah.
You are? God, I have to go back to school. I find one thing to focus on, and then they pray. One of the assignments or exercises I had at art school was photographing with a blindfold on. Just, we took a piece of cloth and wrapped it around our eyes and photographed without seeing. And it was an interesting exercise because you had the opportunity to see what it was like to see photographs not exactly in focus, and just trying to find that sense that is sort of underneath everything. And I recommend doing it in a small room. Actually, it could be your bedroom. Just blindfold yourself and photograph in a small room and see what it's like to see what those photographs look like. I think it'll be an interesting study in photographs being in focus and being out of focus. It'll be interesting to see what you think.